Burlesque by Kamari333. Chapter 31. The Beach Date, Part 2. Dance let him in. Dance felt his entire body go rigid in response to what felt like his soul being dunked in ice water. Suddenly, heralded by the click of the clasp and the soft peal of a bell, he was surrounded on a fundamental level by Red's magic, his intent and his power radiating over his soul like a second skin. It was not that they became one, not a real bond in the usual sense of the word, but close enough that the distinction became redundant. He panted, sucking in lungfuls of air in desperate, stricken bursts. It was cold, it was cold, it was cold, it was cold, it was so goddamn cold. And it was quiet. Dance was in the igloo. He was curled up in a house of ice, protected from the storm. The universe was just outside the metaphorical walls, a cacophony of emotions, muted with the slam of a door. And Dance was alone. He was alone, and it was so cold, just like before, just like a wave of panic that was not his. He had plenty of his own right now. He didn't need more. Go away, go away. Knocked Dance over, coming from seemingly nowhere. Then there was a weight on his shoulders, the jingle of that stupid bell, pressure on his face. A voice. Two voices. He wasn't alone, it wasn't cold. But there was panic both inside and outside the safety of those walls, that barrier erected around his soul which wafted a chill that naturally had him cringing away. Dance? Lust's voice came through first, a steady physical warmth at his side as his boyfriend snapped into place on his arm. Breathe with me, kitten. Breathe. Slow. In and out. Red's soft rumble followed, his large, powerful hands holding Dance upright. He started repeating those instructions rhythmically, in a cycle that matched the same pattern as the changes in his emotions. In, concern, affection. Out, guilt, shame. What's wrong with him? Another voice asked in a hoarse whisper, a voice that Dance did his best to tune out. Thinking about the ashtray would only make him angry. Never seen a reaction that bad before. The other member of the peanut gallery, what was his name? Dance knew he'd heard it, but he just couldn't remember, and at the moment he honestly didn't give a damn. Don't focus on them. Red's voice again stole Dance's attention. Focus on me. Breathe. Hold on, I'ma get it off of ya. Just hold still. Dance heard the soft jingle of the bell, bouncing lightly as his ribcage expanded and retracted rapidly. He felt Red's remorse, his guilt, like it was his fault Dance had gone into shock. He felt Red's hand slide down from his cheek to curl around his throat, fumbling for the clasp. Hell no. Dance gripped onto Red's wrist as tightly as he could, pulling it away from his neck. He could feel the tingle of Red's power under his hand, feel how Red could have so easily ignored Dance's feeble attempts. However, Red's arm immediately went slack in Dance's hold, letting Dance effortlessly move it aside. Dance blinked up at him, realizing at some point his vision had fuzzed out and he was having trouble refocusing. His eyelights were out as well, and it took a few tries to reignite them. Red had closed the distance between them, hovering over Dance like a fretful parent. Dance scowled up at him, less than amused. This is mine now. Dance tightened his grip on Red's arm, uncertain if he'd meant the collar or the monster in his grip with his words. Perhaps both. Red's face lit up in a vivid crimson hue, his eyelight constricting to nearly nothing as it quivered with the fragility of a candle in the wind. Dance could feel his hesitance, his relief, his guilt, but also a small, shuddering shadow of something he could only describe as compliance. Then he smirked crookedly, waves of contentment and validation seeping from him. "If you're sure, kitten," he rumbled, his eyelight dilating, its hue shifting to that muddy red-brown, bright flecks of a lighter color again trying to shine through. Affection crashed over Dance like a tidal wave. "But you might want to take it off and put it back on again. You let me in pretty far. I can feel ya." "Well, good," Dance spat. "Now we're even." "Even?" Red pulled back a bit, although he didn't move the arm still in Dance's grip, careful not to pull hard enough to dislodge Dance's hand. "Even." Lust squeezed at Dance's hand, rubbing two fingers in small, soothing circles over the exposed corner of Dance's radius, just before his carpals. "Sweetie, you didn't!" Dance leaned into Lust's side, reveling in his warmth. Although he hadn't been aware of it, Dance could feel the sudden absence, the muffling, of Lust's love and affection. It left Dance feeling even more cold and alone, despite the influx of Red's. Dance settled Red's hand back on his shoulder, giving him another warning squeeze to remind him not to take his gift back, giving Red a pointed glare, which the asshole answered with an amused smirk. Dance flipped him off on reflex, which he instantly regretted since it was returned by thoughtfulness and a playful leer that spoke volumes about what Red was and was not willing to do. The two of them exchanged looks, and Dance could feel Red's embarrassment swell right along with his own. "Yep, he did." "Guys, are you seriously telling me Red can feel Dance's feelings now?" Lust said, louder than he probably needed to. Dance and Red both snapped their heads to the side to look at him. Lust's eyelights were sparkling in delight. Delight? Dance tried to reach out for it, for that faded sense of his datemate beyond the wall of ice. He focused in on it, and tentatively, hesitantly, tried to push the freezing barrier aside with his will. It parted like a curtain, letting Lust's delight stream through at full blast, along with the rest of the world around him. Dance sagged with relief, leaning harder into his datemate, reveling in the warmth he provided so willingly. He chose not to be concerned about the envy and desire Lust was trying so hard to suppress. He could ask about it later. "Yep." Red practically purred, leaning in to press his frontal bone to Dance's, his other hand reaching up to tug at Lust's collar affectionately. "Why, you want to be next?" "Yes," Lust blurted before cringing sheepishly. "I mean, if you don't mind." Red squeezed on Dance's shoulder, elation radiating off him thickly, along with disbelief. "We can, make that happen when we get home. How's about it?" "Yeah," Lust murmured, pulling Red's hand up to nuzzle into his palm, sockets hooded by half, eyelights pulsing brightly in the shape of inverted hearts. The sheer volume of Red's bewilderment and gratitude and affection had Dance feeling lightheaded. The steady increase in Red's protective aura, as if his resolve to keep the two of them safe had somehow intensified, wasn't helping matters. Energy crackled and sparked around Dance's throat, making his breath hitch and the bell peal at the novel sensation of knowing Red was there and would be there for a long time. Red's gaze returned to Dance, although the heady affection never once wavered, those off-color flecks in his magic shimmering teasingly in his muted eyelight. "Alright there, kitten? Sure you want to keep—" "I'm fine." Dance cut him off, keeping his voice monotone despite knowing Red could feel exactly how very much he intended to keep that collar, even if it looked girly and had that dumb bell which jingled every time he moved or breathed too fast. "Now give me the box so I can put that away." That thing had Red's magic all over it too, and like hell anyone else was getting their hands on it, except maybe Lust if he wanted to borrow it for a bit. Alright, whatever you want, kitten. Red yielded, pulling away to pick the box up and pass it to Dance. Dance immediately stuffed it into his duffel, fighting down the flustered bundle of feelings spawned by what hearing that new pet name was doing to him. He wasn't the kitten here. Oh no. Although he didn't really mind the sentiment. Oh my god. Came a choked gasp from behind Dance, amusement and bemusement melding together in a way that told Dance he found something astonishingly hilarious. When'd you start going all soft on us? Shut the fuck up, smokestack. Red snarled, hiding his abject humiliation behind a veneer of outrage. Holy shit, you're so whipped. The other one, the ashtray, snickered. And then the both of them burst into laughter, falling against each other and holding themselves as they shook with their desperate, hysterical cackles. Dance whipped around, hackles raised, ready to give them a piece of his mind, because Red being fucking nice to him didn't make him whipped. They had no goddamn right to make his fucking boyfriend feel ashamed for doing something right. How fucking dare? But he stopped. Dance froze, hand outstretched halfway through the motion of pointedly denouncing the utter pricks, giggling like hyenas, because apparently hyenas giggled and Dance still didn't understand human animals, because despite all the outrage he himself was feeling, there was a source of a much deeper fury. Lust put a gentle hand on Dance's shoulder, warm and calm and sweet, his gentle smile only the slightest bit tighter at the edges, his eyelights only the smallest bit sharper. He shook his head at Dance ever so slightly. Laugh it up, Red hissed, stuffing his hands in his pockets, his irritation slowly mounting. Just jealous I got such great pets and you're stuck with each other. Ignore them, sweetheart, Lust said. Now we're all here at the beach, and it's been nothing but tension. How about we all go enjoy the water together, huh? Cool off a bit? Red snorted. Think I'll sit out on the swimming. Dance? Lust asked. Sure, I don't mind wading around with you. Dance agreed. Anything if it meant getting away from those two jackasses before he did something stupid. Lust stood up, stripping off his vest and crop top. He had already exchanged his usual leather pants for a pair of violet-colored swim trunks, the legs so wide on his femurs that they fluttered like a skirt, the drawstring cinched tight around his pelvis. He then pulled off his boots, setting them aside, and offered Dance his hand. Dance took it, letting Lust help pull him to his feet, and the two of them headed for the shoreline, where the waves leapt invitingly to greet them. Dance made sure to keep a proverbial eye on Red, even as he enjoyed the warmth of the sun and his date mate's hand in his own. Red sighed, watching his pets go off to enjoy the beach together. He settled more comfortably on his towel, one of the few big fluffy ones he had thanks to his hoarding tendencies and strange obsession with soft things, keeping an eye out for any threats. He ignored the snickering and tittering from his friends, wiping the sweat from his skull. He'd never expected Dance to do that. He'd never expected Dance to let him in so deep, to let him bond. Red never expected anyone to want that with him, to trust him so completely as to know their true selves. Perhaps being both free EXP and apparently a fucking empath, and wasn't that fucking terrifying and impressive, that Dance could zero in on anyone's weakness so easily, and thank fuck he had that kind of edge, or Red would probably never be able to sleep without him in the same goddamn room. Dance might not have held the gesture in the same regard as Red did. That was fine. It didn't make it mean any less to Red. Although, he had to admit, Feeling his pet fall into a void of panic had been the exact opposite of how he had pictured that actually going. He'd worried that it had been too much too soon, that Red's very nature was such anathema to dances that he could never wear his collar. The thought had hurt, but he'd been ready to rip the collar off himself if it meant Dance would have been alright. Sure was a different kind of validation when Dance refused to let it go. Dance, the judgmental prick, had chosen Red to share himself with, to trust to protect him. Those knuckleheads could laugh all they wanted. Being trusted didn't make Red soft. He could still rip Slim in half like wrapping paper. The overgrown shithead better watch his goddamn mouth. He was so fucking lucky Red already considered him a friend, or there'd be about 10 pounds of dust mixed into the sand by now. And it was so strange to feel Dance take his feelings and bounce them right back at him like a mirror. Red closed his sockets for a moment, fighting down his LV-fueled rage and compartmentalizing it. Single upside of LV was the way it could be used to nullify emotions. Not that it was an easy thing to learn how to do, since it naturally tried to mute the better stuff, like compassion and kindness and sympathy, so it could also mute pain. Anyone with LV higher than 10 had to learn to make it work for them instead of against them, or they lost their marbles. As soon as Red had his mind-numbing bloodlust put into check, the echoes of Dance's own rage went down significantly. He was still annoyed, which was to be expected. The guy was never happy about anything, but it wasn't nearly as intense or pervasive. Red opened his sockets, relieved he could do this much. Red, you sure got yourself some nice date mates there. Stretch finally wheezed, now that he could once again articulate beyond wordless cackling. BJ cooks him dinner every night. Slim teased, clutching his shirt over his heaving ribs. Red groaned loudly, trying to make a point that their shitty wordplay was awful and they could both go choke on a sea slug. Sure do water yourself down around them, huh, buddy? Stretch hummed, reaching into Slim's pocket to pull out a baggie of pre-rolled kush. The good stuff, if Red knew Slim. His dealer was top tier. Stretch lit one and took a long drag, exhaling with a satisfied smile. Red knew he smoked regular cigarettes regularly, but given his face when he took that first hit of the day, Stretch probably didn't do weed when he was at home. Red supposed it had something to do with his brother, whom Red had never met, but Stretch took turns bragging and complaining about in equal measure. I don't do shit, Red snorted. Maybe I just like him more than your ass. Ever think of that? I think you like him plenty, Marina, darling. Slim drawled, plucking the joint from Stretch's offered hand and taking a hit for himself. They really pull you out of your shell. Your puns are bad and you should feel bad, Red grumbled, glaring his friend down. Slim flicked his wrist, encasing the joint in his mouth in a blue glow, directing it languidly with his finger until the joint had floated from between his teeth to hover well within arm's reach of Red. Red snatched the thing out of the air out of habit, putting it to his own teeth to take a long drag. An echo of jealousy and possessiveness shot through the link between him and Dance like a lightning bolt, making every joint in Red's body lock up in surprise. He snapped his attention to his pet, ripping the joint away from his teeth as his own territorial concern bubbled up, worried that someone might have been harassing Lust again. But Dance was looking at Red. Even at this distance, Red could just see the intensity of Dance's expression, not that he needed to feel the nearly feral displeasure oozing from him down the link from the collar. Red couldn't help but be surprised. He never pegged Dance to be so emotionally volatile, or all that emotional at all, besides the abundant bouts of salt and irritation. He also could not, for the life of him, figure out what it was that had triggered Dance's behavior. Lust was right there, treading water up to his chin. Nobody was anywhere near him except Dance himself. Red did a quick scan of the perimeter. The humans and other monsters were keeping a healthy distance, nobody near him except Slim and Stretch. Red sighed, relaxing back again. Whatever it was must have been Dance's imagination or had left. He brought the joint back up ready to take a hit, only for another equally strong wave of jealousy to echo back to him. Red sprang to his feet, doing a more thorough scan of the area, only to find that nothing was different than his first one. They were largely alone despite the looming crowd. Red settled back on his towel, returning to his vigilance, watching over his pets. Lust nudged Dance playfully, and he could just barely make out a few words over the roar of the ocean and the crowd. "What's wrong?" Dance muttered something that was too low for Red to pick up at that distance clearly. It ended with the D sound, but that was all he could catch between the ocean and the people. An echo of embarrassment and shyness followed. Lust and Dance both shot Red a look. Red waved with the hand still clutching the joint between his knuckles. He thought he saw an amused glint in his sweetheart sockets before Lust pulled Dance into a kiss. The distracting kind. The kind that Lust seemed to know damn well made their senses overload, given the sudden pulses of pleasure and contentment that came from Dance. Red put the joint to his teeth and took a long drag, sighing in relief as the smoke filled his ribcage for the first time in months. Maybe today wasn't gonna suck as much as he thought. Lust didn't know how he could feel both utterly ecstatic and shamefully envious all at the same time. He was so happy Dance had accepted the collar. He knew what it meant to Red, how happy it made him. He was so happy that his boyfriends were getting along. But he was exceedingly jealous that Dance got to share his feelings to Red first. Was that petty? That was definitely petty. He needed to stomp that out right now. And he was going to get his turn later. Red said so. So it was fine. Lust nuzzled closer to Dance in the water, leaning against his shoulder and breathing deeply. With the collar on, Dance now had not only his own distinctive presence, but little bits of Red mixed in too. It was wonderful. Now Lust had another source of that soft, gentle chill, even if it wasn't as strong or all-consuming. He reached up, purposefully jingling the little bell, loving the sound already. Dance flushed. "What was that for?" "No reason," Lust hummed, kissing at his jawline. "It looks great on you, you know." "It's stupid looking," Dance grumbled. "You don't like it?" Lust personally couldn't imagine disliking such a lovely gift, but his opinion wasn't the important one here. "I like it," Dance said quickly, his hand shooting up to grip onto it like he was afraid someone would try to take it away. "Just think it looks dumb on me." "It looks great on you," Lust assured him, putting his own hand over Dance's. Lust felt the refreshing chill of Red's magic curl around his fingers, accepting and familiar. It didn't have any of the repellent bite that Red's collar did. A nice change, and spoke volumes about Red's trust in him, didn't it? "Why do you have to get one with a bell?" Dance lamented, equal parts frustrated and bemused. "It's just going to ring every time I move or breathe wrong." "But you're so good at moving," Lust reminded him. "I bet you won't have any trouble doing it right." Dance flushed that pretty pale blue, and again Lust was reminded how lucky he was to have this sweet, caring, adorable man as his boyfriend. "Guess I should start practicing then, huh?" "Don't say you want to help, don't say you want to help, don't say you want to help." "I'd love to help you practice moving." Lust heard himself simper, kicking himself inwardly. Dance let go of his collar, gripped at Lust's hips under the water with both hands. He kneaded at Lust's exposed ala, slow and gentle. "Really?" he rumbled, his voice pitching lower, deeper, drawing out the noise. Lust shivered in his hands, looping his arms around Dance's neck and hiding his face in his shoulder. "Well, it's a good thing skeletons don't need to breathe then, isn't it?" He dug his phalanges hard into Lust's bones, leaving shallow scratches in the surface, and Lust unable to think of anything beyond how good Dance was to him. Dance leveled his boyfriend with what he'd hoped were decent bedroom eyes, even though he knew on a fundamental level that Lust was loving what he did. He still worried it wasn't quite up to par. He'd never get used to having to perform with his face exposed. "Stay quiet. You don't want to attract attention, do ya?" He chuckled at Lust's expression, at his sudden swell of love, arousal, gratitude, like Dance wasn't getting just as much out of this as he was, and that seemingly perpetual undertone of shame. Dance let his hands roam under the water, one up to toy with Lust's lumbar vertebrae, earning him a delicious whimper, the other loosening the tie on Lust's swim trunks, letting him drift down and out of the way so Dance could get to Lust's pubic symphysis. As Dance rubbed and stroked at Lust's sensitive cartilage, he felt his boyfriend begin to pant heavily against his neck. Lust had always been a bit of a screamer, making the moments when he had reason to keep quiet that much more exciting. Dance pinched at the sensitive joint, adding a bit of pain to the mix. Lust's breath hitched, his temperature spiking even in the water. Dance could feel him cling tighter to his back, clawing at Dance's scapula through his swimsuit. A soft whimper drifted over the sound of the tide. And back on shore, Red was radiating embarrassment and something close to arousal of his own. Perfect. Lust started to rut into Dance's hand. "Please." Dance shushed him, gentle yet firm. That hadn't been the safe word. Dance's fingers slipped into his boyfriend's pelvic inlet, stirring the churning, burning magic that had displaced the seawater. Dance knew what Lust wanted to do, but not this time, not yet. Dance started toying and teasing at Lust's sacrum in earnest, stimulating the heated magic that was pooling there as he worked. Lust's shaking intensified. He squirmed in Dance's hold, unable to keep still even if he wanted to. Dance smirked. He looked casually over his shoulder at his other date mate, bringing the hand that had been on Lust's spine up to wave at him. Red didn't wave back this time, but Dance could see the crimson glow of his face intensify even from this distance. His embarrassment was palpable. Lust peeked up over Dance's shoulder, and Dance felt Lust's own desire swell. "What's the matter, baby?" Dance cooed softly into his lover's skull, knowing full well what he was looking at. He held Lust's head there against his shoulder, against his neck, against the collar that radiated Red's essence, keeping him from really being able to look away from their shared date mate. "You seem excited." As Dance spoke, he dug two of his phalanges into just as many foramen in Lust's sacrum, scratching roughly at the sensitive inner surfaces. Lust whined, bucking into his touch. "Master, please, let me..." Lust gasped, trying to keep his voice down so it wouldn't carry on the wind. "Don't form anything," Dance commanded, thumbing at the unshaped magic for emphasis. Lust bit lightly into Dance's shoulder, his right shoulder, right on his clavicle, right over that fucking scar. He was starting to think Lust knew what that did to him, even if he didn't know why. "You can come like this." Lust whimpered, working his hips vigorously against Dance's hand. Dance knew it was significantly harder to get Lust off without him summoning his ectobiology. He'd only ever succeeded in doing it once before, on complete accident. Dance also knew that Lust enjoyed it, just like Lust apparently enjoyed being watched. "He knows what we're doing," Dance murmured sweetly in his datemate's ear. Lust whimpered louder, muffled by Dance's shoulder. "He's watching us, watching you. I bet he knows you're looking back at him. Bet he's thinking about what you look like under the water. Bet he's imagining how you're fucking yourself on my hand." Dance didn't consider himself the best at dirty talk, but he knew it did things to his boyfriend that they both liked. He must have been doing something right, since Lust's breathing picked up even faster, and he could feel his excitement grow even more. Dance felt his own soul shudder at the force of it, at how it was him that was doing this to Lust. His hands and his words and his boyfriend indirectly helping them along. Bet he's thinking about coming out here and running his hands over you too. Dance continued, pumping his own phalanges up and down over every ridge of Lust's sacrum foramen, thinking of taking those long, powerful claws and leaving a few marks you'll feel for a week. Dance didn't even get to finish his sentence before Lust came, shuddering and whimpering as his whole body convulsed with the force of it. Joy and excitement and love rolled up in a thrilling buzz of intimate euphoria, bowled Dance over and had him reaching his own end by proxy, his soul thrashing in his ribs so hard he worried it would break them. He didn't stop his fingers, working Lust through his shuddering throes as best he could, letting himself indulge in a low, satisfied growl. He was the one who could make Lust feel this way. He was the one in control. He was the one with the power. And by God, he loved the exquisite creature that gave it to him. Dance pulled his hand up from Lust's pelvis, gripping onto his collar, feeling that chilling buzz yield to him, and yanked his lover roughly into a kiss. Lust reciprocated with a fervid passion, clutching to his collar and his skull, moaning sweetly into his teeth, letting Dance drink in his gratitude and love. And behind him, on the beach, Red sat patiently, waiting for them to return to him, fighting down his own want and his own frustration with his own contentment. Dance couldn't get over how a seemingly selfish bastard like Red could glean joy from the satisfaction of another. It only made him that much more attractive in Dance's eyes. And that only made his own frustration at not being able to have him, all of him, that much more unbearable. Red was increasingly more grateful for the weed Slim had offered him. Without it, he knew he'd never have been able to compose himself. It had been bad enough when it had been in the other room with only one caller to transmit their intent. It was so much worse being able to see them, even from a distance, with both of their intent streaming back to him. He needed a drink, 2, 3, a fucking keg, for fuck's sake. They were in fucking public. Were they trying to kill him? "Whoa, dude, I've never seen you flush like that. How long has it been since you got high?" Stretch asked, thankfully unaware of any other possible reason for Red's magic flooding his face. Red still seriously considered walking into the ocean until he was completely submerged and not coming out for the rest of the day. Slim, the smartass, leered at Red knowingly, occasionally glancing out at where Red's pets were innocuously hugging as they enjoyed the water. "Wish you were into Splashdown yet, darlin'?" "Fuck off," Red snapped irritably, taking a more violent drag of the joint before passing it back over to them. "Well, if you're offering." "Shut up, Smokestack. Don't be a smartass." "I don't have an ass. I'm a skeleton." You mean you don't have an ass now? Stretch chimed in, his grin taking on a vaguely lecherous attribute as he looked over to his date mate. I stand corrected. I always have an ass when you're around, honey. Slim drawled with a deeper intonation. Don't mean you get any, Stretch quipped. You kiss your mother with that mouth? No, but I kiss you. And then Stretch went and proved his point, leaning in to take charge. Slim hummed happily, leaning into Stretch's advances and taking that moment to steal back the joint. Red groaned, rubbing his sockets. His friends weren't really bothering him. His frustration had more to do with the echoes of what he knew had to be a very good time Dance was having out there with Lust. He was glad they were having fun, happy and all that bullshit. It was just... what the fuck did he even want? Red didn't even know. How could he be so utterly miserable when he had everything he knew he wanted? What more could he even ask for? Lust was his pet. Dance was now officially his pet. Dance had shown him the ultimate form of trust. Red was happy, but something was missing. He just didn't understand what. After a few more minutes in the water, Dance and Lust came back to shore. They didn't look any different, no sign of anything having been amiss, no sign of what Red knew they had damn well been doing, aside from faintly flushed faces and Lust still breathing hard, both of which could have been explained from swimming. Lust stumbled over to Red and ragdolled into his lap, purring softly as he nuzzled into Red's chest. Red didn't mind how he was getting him all wet. Supporting Lust with one arm, he leaned back the rest of the way, supine on his towel, and looked up at Dance. Dance looked down at him, at them, his face its usual passive-aggressive cross between a resting bitch face and a lazy smirk. His eyelights sharpened as Red watched him, and a pulse of something like hunger, like contentment, like confidence shot through the bond of the collar. It reminded Red of how he felt seeing his collar on his pets. It was good, knowing Dance was so attached to Lust. I'm gonna get us a snack. Don't go anywhere, Dance said, pointing down at the two of them firmly. We'll be right here, baby, Lust hummed, his sockets drifting shut. Red had to give it to Dance. Whatever he did, he wore even Lust right out, and that was no easy feat. Red had plenty of energy, but even he usually ended up faltering well before Lust was this tired. Red scratched at Lust's jaw, glad to be the one he chose to come to for rest, to be the one he felt safe enough to rest with. I'ma be here, lest you need help, Red agreed, knowing that of the two of them, a tired pet needed his protection more than one still able to walk. Mind picking us something up too, pal? Stretch called out, finally deciding to shuck off his hoodie, revealing his black tank beneath. It still blew Red's mind that he didn't have a collar. Dance looked to Stretch, grin stretching wider, tighter. He winked with his right socket. Sure thing, buddy, so long as it means you won't eat my share. Red felt the mistrust and animosity hit him, right before Dance spun on his heels and headed for the food court. He didn't hear the expected jingle of the bell. Lust ended up dozing through the rest of the outing, basking in the afterglow. He heard Dance leave and come back a few times, usually returning with a snack or a drink. Red shook him awake at one point, a hot dog in his other hand, insisting he eat. Which he did, right out of Red's hand. The way Red's maxilla flushed was adorable. Sometimes it was too easy to fluster him, and Lust was loving it, loving that Red would open up to him that much. Dance settled at Red's side, pulling Lust's legs into his lap and wiping the sand off of them with a towel. Darling, the absolute gentleman, Stars, Lust loved him so much, as Red continued to throw banter back and forth with his friends. Dance threw in the occasional passive-aggressive quip. Lust got the feeling he didn't like Red's friends very much, but otherwise kept to himself. Red's coat was draped over him, but Lust didn't know for sure if it was Red who put it there or Dance. The most exciting part of the evening happened during one of Dance's snack runs. He was a tad late coming back when Red suddenly sat bolt upright, cradling Lust, coat and all, against him protectively, so Lust didn't get thrown about from Red's sudden movement. His body tensed under him, energy humming aggressively. Lust woke up enough to get to his own feet, pulling the coat closed over his bare ribs as Red jumped to his feet and bolted, only to freeze 6 feet away and start laughing. Stretch and Slim joined him seconds later. Lust rubbed his sockets to get the slime out of them, blinking and focusing his eyelights until he could see what Red saw. A little ways away was Dance, holding one of those cardboard trays that carried drinks in one hand and a pizza box in the other. He was surrounded by 3 rather energetic-looking seagulls who kept lunging for him. Dance elegantly sidestepped their advances, dodging each of them in turn, all while keeping the food from falling into the sand.
"Oh shit, and I thought it was crows what like sparkly baubles,"
Red wheezed, holding his midriff as he shook from laughter. "You're a dick!" Dance shouted as he dodged yet another foul attack, which Lust could now see were the bird's attempts to steal his bell. The tiny bauble didn't jingle once, despite Dance's seemingly vigorous motions. Lust smiled, a shiver running down his spine at the thought of just how talented his datemate had to be to accomplish that after only a few hours.
"Good thing my boyfriend's like Dick then, ain't it?"
Red quipped back, finally pulling himself together enough to make his way over. He started by trying to shoo the birds away, grumbling,
"Away with you, damn flying rats."
But the birds barely paid him any mind. Dance tried to make a break for it, dashing back to the umbrella, but one of the birds circled around to make another go at him. Lust shook his head, reaching out from the safety of Red's coat with one hand. He caught the one bird with a flick of his wrist in blue magic, sending it careening back up into the sky, as high as Lust could reach, until he couldn't hold on any longer and lost his grip on it. Dance darted under the shadow of Lust's giant parasol, sighing with relief. He sat down on his towel, pulling out 2 drinks before setting the last 2, tray and all, to the side, closer to Stretch and Slim. Stretch flicked his wrist to bring the tray closer without having to get up.
"Have I mentioned how much I love you?"
Dance hummed, looking up at Lust with that handsome, lazy smile that made his grace look effortless.
"Once or twice,"
Lust hummed, settling back down, leaning against him.
"Don't I at least get a thanks for busting my ass?"
Red grumbled, coming back over after shooing the other 2 birds away.
"No, I hate you. Fuck off. Ungrateful prick."
Dance's eyelights were sparkling brightly, despite the pastel dusting of blue that spread from his nasal bridge. Red's toothy grin was turned up higher than his usual confident smirk. Lust chuckled, knowing they were both lying through their teeth. As soon as Red lay back down, this time on his side, propping his head up on one arm, Lust snuggled back up into him, ready to return to his dozing.
"How the hell did you do that?"
Slim finally asked.
"Just a couple of dumbass birds. Swatted them."
"Not that! Your pet just..." Slim gesticulated incoherently.
"He just snatched a bird out of thin air and threw it."
Lust started to close his eyes, but he could feel Red's claws scratch tenderly at his jaw. Always tender, always gentle, careful, his sweetheart.
"Oh, that?"
Red chuckled, warm and deep and proud, a comforting vibration against Lust's back.
"Lust's just full of surprises like that, ain't you, sweetheart?"
He shifted his index phalanx to reach under Lust's collar, scratching lightly at his neck, which had long since ceased to give much attention and was becoming rather sensitive. Lust tilted his head up to one side, baring more of his neck for Red to get at. He hummed an affirmation, but he wasn't all that invested in the conversation. He was more interested in how hard Red was going to dig his claw into his neck and for how long.
How? 'Cause my pet's fucking awesome.
Red kept scratching idly, gently, sweetly, and Lust let himself drift. He felt Dance settle closer to them, felt Dance's hand settle on his skull and stroke over it, lazy and even. He heard the dull roar of conversation over his head, but if Lust were honest, this was exactly what he wanted. A nice, lazy day at the beach, sunbathing with his boyfriends, just casual affection, and the occasional interruption of food or vicious birds. When the sun began to set, Suave made his way over to them, declaring his own date complete and saying he was heading home. Dance got up, not going to let his little brother walk all the way back to their apartment alone, promising to meet Lust and Red back at their place. Red picked up Dance's duffel, throwing it over his shoulder, and while Lust was still waking himself back up, ripped out the parasol and folded it back up. Lust couldn't pull his clothes back on fast enough. They were going home, and Red had promised.
Hey guys, Mel here. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed it, please like this video, and if you want to see more, consider subscribing. I look forward to bringing you the next chapter. Bye!